Lloyd Russell-Moyle, Labour MP, the chair of the Appg, the UK Parliament is all-party parliamentary group on Kurdistan and Syria and Turkey. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appg published a report called Kurdish Political Representation and Equality in Turkey. What are the main results of that report, first of all?
Well, the main results of the report, which we have published, as you can see just here, is that we believe that a great deal of political repression is happening in Turkey currently against Kurdish politicians. We are deeply concerned about this, and particularly how the Turkish state, led by current President Erdogan, is widening the definition of what is considered to be illegitimate activity and trying to prevent what we would describe as a legitimate activity. And that has included the prosecution of HDP and CHP politicians and mayors. It has included a targeting of women, and we've seen, of course, with Turkey's withdrawal from the Istanbul Convention. And what we ask is for the government to relook at how Britain supports democratic forces in Turkey, particularly the Kurds, to make sure that there is not a repression and a silencing of critical voices. Turkey is meant to be our ally, so we have a greater duty to speak truth to our ally when they're doing things wrong. The other part that we particularly point out is this, as I mentioned earlier, worrying increase of consideration of any Kurdish sympathisers being PKK sympathisers. It is clearly not true to suggest that the PKK are terrorists in the same vein as ISIS. They might be terrorists in other kinds of veins, but most of the court cases, the Belgian court case, the European court case, talks about them being freedom fighters and an internal dispute. And we asked the British government to relook at its classification to make sure that it is not being used by Turkey to silence dissent. People who want peaceful and democratic means of expression for the Kurds are being branded PKK supporters, even if they do not support the use of any violence. This is wrong. Clearly, this can't continue. And we ask for the British government to therefore review and be more transparent in how it is classing some of those organizations, because we believe that Turkey is deliberately trying to expand that definition so as to shut down legitimate activity.
You have already mentioned about labeling the Kurds and the Kurdish community centers basically not as a terrorist organizations like ISIS. So APPG also calls UK government not to label as terrorists the Kurdish community centers and individual Kurds, just because of they are Kurds as a result. There's something important then to mention. How would you comment on the UK's criminalization policies? Can we say Kurds facing labels, as UK is one of the important allies with Turkey? Very short, very briefly, that one.
Our real worry was that the prohibition of the PKK might well mean that actually legitimate activities like Kurdish social centres, community centres were effectively criminalised, and that's why we've asked the government to separate those definitions and be clearer. The government has already done so. So the government has already done so with people who are involved in the SDF forces, the Syrian Democratic Forces, the YPG, the YPJ. Those brave Kurdish fighters that fought off ISIS and saved humanity. So the British government already, despite Turkey thinking they're terrorists, says that they're not. They were freedom fighters and they were fighters for everyone. And so because Britain already does it for that, we say that Britain should look at making better definitions for people who are involved in other Kurdish community groups.
Thank you. The treatment of the Kurdish population and of elected representatives is one of the greatest threats to democracy in Turkey and the wider region as well. The report said in its introduction. Could you please comment on that very short, very briefly on that one as well?
Well, at the moment, we have a large number of municipal leaders that have been removed from their status. We have also a large number of MPs that have been indicted, and they are silenced effectively. And so we say we are very worried about a number of these accusations. You know, one of the accusations was that one politician had helped found the PKK. The PKK was founded when this person was 5 years old. It clearly is ridiculous to suggest that they were involved in the founding of the PKK. A 5-year-old did not found the PKK. But Turkey is making up these accusations to undermine and eventually remove democratically elected politicians who hold opposition views, which are perfectly legitimate. The other activities that they're doing is when they then try these cases, they try them in Istanbul rather than in their home provinces. So it's much harder to mount defences. These are all hallmarks of a country that is moving to a more totalitarian way of working, and that should not be something that Britain takes lightly.
The Appg also said and suggested that the British government should review the definition of terrorist given to the PKK in the light of the Belgian court decision. Do you think this is realistic and will be processed by the parliament? As you mentioned, that section, that result, that's another important point actually on the report. But could you please look at it from the realistic perspective? Do you think the parliament will process the APPG's this specific result?
We don't expect the British government to change its view immediately. What we do expect is for them to start to provide more nuance in their decisions. And the British government might well keep some elements of PKK activity within their prescribed list where people can be prosecuted. But we think it is important that along with the Belgium and the Luxembourg European Court of Justice cases, the British government seriously considers the issue that in large part, this is not terrorist activity, this is an internal conflict. Now, an internal conflict does also mean that people can still break the law. If people in internal conflict target civilians, that is a war crime. And so people who are involved in PKK or, kind of, I think it's the Grey Wolves or whatever, the terrorist organization of the far right in Turkey, or whomever, they can still be found guilty for doing crimes. It is not a get out of free jail card for reviewing whether someone's classed as a terrorist. In fact, it gives more responsibility to those people involved in it. But what it does mean is that if you just share the ideas, which is the ideas of self-autonomy for the Kurds, you can't be brandished with a ridiculous label.
Also, on the report added that Turkey's human rights violations and war crimes should be condemned. Do you think condemnation is enough in that case? Why not UK at least stop arms deal with Turkey with some sanctions? Could you please give some short and to the point answer to that one, as it's very important. Basically, the condemnations are coming from all over the Europe, but do you think action speaks louder than words in that case?
Well, I would very much like the British government to review how it does all arms sales to all different countries. And we have asked in this report for the British government to review some of the targeting of civilians. We've asked for the government to raise this with the Turkish government, to provide clarity on the use of curfews and civil liberties, including the time frame. And if that clarity is not forthcoming, then that should trigger the already existing processes that put in arms restrictions, because internal repression is one of the reasons already under British law for arms to not be provided. So whilst the report itself doesn't say that there should be a ban on arms to Turkey, what it does say is the British government must seek reassurances that internal repression is not taking place. And if those assurances can't come forward, then that triggers the ban anyway.
Dear Lloyd Russell-Moyle, Labour MP, the chair of the Appg, thanks for joining us. Thank you for your valuable comments today.
Thank you. My pleasure as always.
Thank you.